You're listening to the Waypoint TV Podcast Network, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Hey, it's Chuck with the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. Rifle season is finally here. An Academy Sports and Outdoors store has everything to gear up for the field for less. Don't miss our Savage event, where you can score up to $100 off select Savage rifles for a limited time. Plus, shop a wide selection of rifles, ammo, deer stands, game cameras, optics, and camo hunting apparel from the brands you trust. Swing by your local Academy store today, or shop academy.com, where we have thousands of firearms with free ship to store. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping. Well, we'll see you soon at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV. And as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season is upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about critical thinking. I don't know, more and more, when I think, it's like, how do you know what's right and wrong? How do you know when you're being lied to or duped and whatever? And I know we're all so busy in life that we're doing 100 things that you don't really have time to fact check or do everything like we need to. And we end up being forced to, put a million ideas in our head and then decide, yeah, true, not true, fake news, whatever. And we have all this blasted at us all the time. And there's got to be a way to kind of sort through it. And I think that's really what it comes down to. One of the big things I always come up with is, Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, always says contradictions don't exist. So I guess what I take away from that is, like, you kind of know the core or your feeling of the core of somebody, and you kind of decide, all right, this person usually tells me the truth. Like when I used to really enjoy listening to Rush Limbaugh, and I'd hear him talk or whatever. And, I would know that he usually does some kind of research. However, I know the perspective and the agenda that he's coming with, and I kind of can take that into account and weigh it out. Now, I found him to be truthful and literal and, in line with things that I had believed, but this is how we all kind of perceive this stuff. And I was wondering if there's like a core model of how you can evaluate things. And I kind of wanted to talk about that. So I did a lot of research on like critical thinking and how you analyze, problems, and even, listen to some podcasts on the scientific method and, that kind of thing, and how we get there and how we understand reality. What's your take on this, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I think you bring up a good point that, like, we're all getting ready to go vote, and
what's right.
Right. I mean, we all have things going on, we all have jobs. We all, taking kids to practice here and there and racing around, trying to keep up with the yard work, trying to keep up with everything else that you got going on in your life. You don't always have time to do deep research on any subject that isn't, part of your daily life.
Right. 100%. And that's like, if you go down my wife's news feed and you go down my kids' news feed and you go down my news feed of what we see in social media and all the different things, we all see something very different.
Right.
We have, a different world. You were talking about, people worried about what kind of ads they get on their phone. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. It's,
Right.
whether it's your ads are filled with pretty women showing you, bare breasts or something versus somebody who sees nothing but kitten collars or whatever,
Right. Right.
you might shape your own reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a big thing with you hear it a lot now, but echo chambers is the thing that you hear. Your feed on Facebook is similar to your feed on, 5 other social media platforms, and you watch the TV channels that reinforce those ideas.
Yeah.
And you end up like believing some total bullshit that you're blowing smoke up your own ass.
I always find that my social media, I know that things are going down a bad road when it's nonstop King of the Hill that they're recommending on on YouTube, because I like I follow this guy like Eric Weinstein and there's some like really sharp guys out there, that put out a lot of great knowledge, and I'll have all these like impressive gurus kind of, that kind of thing. There's a girl I follow who does business. Cody Sanchez is I find pretty entertaining. But there's a lot of people who are really sharp, and I can notice when YouTube's like, oh, well, we got some family. So that's how I know I'm watching the wrong things when, those things come up on the feed all the time. So anyway, one of the things, that comes to mind is like one of the cool things about America is we're founded with the separate states. And the idea originally with the discussions was that the states can kind of do what they want. They have a broad framework of what we want our country to be and a mutual defense. And, we had the Bill of Rights, right, which has a set guideline of what our country's going to be in a framework. However, the states could then do whatever they wanted to do within that confine of bigger picture. And that was one of the cool things, was that it was going to be unique where we could all, find our own way and kind of experiment and try different things.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, anybody that studies American history knows that that's like a big part of the founding of the country, is this idea of federalism versus anti-federalism. There's the Articles of Confederation, which had a federal government that was not powerful enough. And, then we went to the current Constitution that we have. And, that Constitution is it's a living document. You can change it and adjust it. And different people from different times are going to have different ideas on, what should and should not be something that the federal government does, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that were super into banning all alcohol, and there was an amendment to the Constitution because of that. And then there was another amendment to not ban alcohol. So, I mean, things change, people change, times change. But the truth is that we all have more freedom in a country that puts more of the rights in the hands of the states than in the federal government.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We've obviously gotten away from that. And I think that's one of the things that concerns me is I feel like the schools, I feel like there's been a big effort, and you can argue this left, right, throughout time, that the schools are almost, I would say, rewriting history, but we could at least, I think, agree that we're showing selective history, right? Showing the things we want to showcase that happened. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily telling lies, but they're focusing on things that create a certain agenda or a point. And I mean, that's whenever, we shape a discussion, right? When we're talking about the podcast, I I'm going to gather a bunch of information that's going to support my theory. Right.
Right.
And that's where you guys get the good balance with me and Kevin is we both come from a different mindset. We're not exactly the same. Now we're kind of in sync. If you're too far apart, I think,
right. You can't even have a decent conversation,
a cohesive show, but just the same. We're not the same. And we definitely come with our own agenda and our own goals and whatever. And that way you do get like a, back and forth, but also a different perspective. And I think that's the beauty of, as we go through school, in America, we have the different classes, one, you probably have a different teacher for each subject, but you also have a different teacher each year. And at least you might get a different shot. Now, it sucks that, I know we only do like biology 1 year. So if you don't have the right biology teacher or the right chemistry teacher, you maybe miss a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it gives you different perspectives. And that's why it's so important that you're learning things at home, that you're learning, with kids, that things are getting shaped up in a certain way. And also it's why as adults, it's important we seek out other information. If something interests you, if a topic you feel is important, something you're passionate about, do a little research, do a little digging. It's funny. We get all these bills and things are shaped in a certain way. Like we'll get the Patriot Act. That's the one I always like to go to because it always seemed like it's like the most unpatriotic thing. Because it's, hey, we're going to take away all these rights that you had and we're going to give the government extra.
I guess basically, I feel like the Patriot Act was, basically the end of the right of privacy.
Right.
That was really, basically what it did.
If you had any illusions, you had privacy before that. They kind of went away with the Patriot Act, but it's also like, you'll be like Honest Abe's law firm, right? The Honest Law Firm or the Affordable Care Act, because I know your healthcare got more affordable after we passed that, right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. But we put these names on what we want people to think of, but it doesn't mean that's the reality. And that's where that whole critical thinking kind of comes into it. And learning how to analyze things and looking at the facts. And, a lot of that so much is based on our life experiences, right? When we touch the stove, we get burned, right? As simple as that. Oh, I shouldn't probably touch the stove anymore. Or if I do, make sure it's been off for a little while. Or, hey, I can wear an oven mitt. And when I grab the pot the next time, it's not so bad, that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. We learn how to deal with and control things. Like just because something can be tough doesn't mean we have to completely avoid it, but we need to learn how to read signs and how to recognize what's going on. Like you might go up to a dog when you're young and the dog turns, growls at you, maybe bites you in the leg. And you're like, ooh, all dogs are bad. That's what I learned. I should not go up to dogs.
Once bitten, twice shy, right?
Right, exactly. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like it turns out you can say, all right, let me look at what other people are doing. Everyone I see, they don't all get bit by dogs. Only some people get bit by dogs.
Right.
How are they approaching it? What can I notice? Well, this dog over here, he doesn't bite me. But what do I see in his personality when I go up to it versus the other? That kind of thing, right? But we learn to recognize what's going on and we evaluate. That's why I always laugh at, I hate to say it, because I didn't want to get into really controversial topics because it's more about the approach that I'm worried about. But you think about global warming, right? Now, is the climate changing? Yes, of course. But I think what scared so many people off with the science was they were like, it's science because we all agree. I'm like, that's not really how science works. Like we can look at a graph and see that temperatures are hotter this year and say, you know what? It's science that from 2 years ago, it's hotter now than it was before because we did a study. That's true. But do we know why? And there are ways to figure out the why, right? I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm just saying there needs to be research and study, and it can't just be we all agree. Like, we talked about it and we decided people are the problem. Well, maybe they are. And I'm sure people have an effect on things, but do we know how much of the problem? And then you want to convince me, well, if I tax the shit out of you, then the problem will go away. Again, I'm not seeing a correlation to my money going in your pocket to pay for your boat and your plane really helping climate change. But that's what you need to decide, right? You need to weigh all the decision making. Now, I agree 100%, as we set up in the beginning of this show, is we can't just research everything, right? I don't have the time or the energy or even care enough to research global warming to the extent that I could really prove it on my own, right? Mm-hmm. I can't do that. But what I can do is I can say, well, who are the people presenting evidence that kind of makes sense? And then are there other people who are, affirming this or taking away from it? And when they take away from it, what are they saying and why does it make sense? And, you just got to be open-minded to things. One of the big things with news, right? We see these, this person wants to ban abortion for the whole world and kill babies or kill moms, I guess. And then the other one wants to kill babies and the other one wants to, well, okay. But did I see the person say that? No, it doesn't mean that they didn't say it because I didn't see it, but maybe I should look. And does that track with everything else the person's saying?
Yeah, I just actually saw 2 commercials back to back. And one was an advertisement for one of our local congressmen. Mm-hmm. And a new person is running against him. Okay. And the whole ad is about how he supports abortion. He's like the biggest piece of shit. He wants a federal ban on abortion. Then there's an ad immediately after that by this candidate. And he's saying, I've always supported like the health of the mother and completely contradict one another. Obviously somebody's lying. Right. You know what I mean?
And that's, and we have to do the research kind of on your own. Now, something as important as voting for somebody for president probably should put some effort into it. Now, how much does the president have the effect on your life? I don't know. And how much
not very much.
How much control do we have over who's going to actually win? Mm-hmm. Probably not that much. I got to tell you, Kevin in New York, it probably doesn't matter who Kevin votes for. New York is going to have the same outcome for president, no matter how Kevin votes.
I'll tell you one thing, though. My county district attorney, I changed my mind at the last minute. And voted for the candidate I wasn't going to vote for. Yeah. And he won by 3 votes. So
on the local
if I had voted for him, he would have only won by 1 vote. Like, it doesn't take that much to swing things, A
couple of people not getting out and going out. That makes a difference, right? No, exactly. So, I mean, that's something to consider. But that's it. You need to weigh the facts and you need to talk to people and you need to research on your own a little bit. But I think the thing is, issues that are important to you is where you need to devote your energy, right? And not get caught up in nonsense. And also, I think we need to look for red flags of, hey, that contradicts everything I knew about it. Like one of the things, my wife will watch a bunch of interviews on, like, she'll see clips of Donald Trump and she'll be like, gee, look, he's completely lost it and he's incoherent, when I see him talk there. And I'll see an interview with him and he'll be sharp and really together. Mm-hmm. And you're like, how are we both getting such a different perspective?
Right.
And because you can kind of pick and choose things. I will say it was pretty funny. They had that Fox News interview with Kamala Harris, and he was like, yeah, you're saying that, you recognize that Trump's really losing it and he's out of touch and he's incoherent. And he goes, so when did you notice that about Biden? And she's just like, And I'm like, yeah, that was funny. Sorry. And that was my one little political dig in the whole episode. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
I saw it. I was like, oh, that would hurt. But again, it's not that isn't, somebody with a gotcha moment shouldn't be why you vote for somebody. Right.
Right. Well, when's the last time we elected an ugly president?
Oh, well,
Abraham Lincoln. That's basically once they, once they started taking pictures of people, it was kind of all over for ugly guys. You know what I mean? You're bald. Good luck with that, bro. What was it, Eisenhower, the last bald president? Or at least the one that was presenting as bald. I don't know what's going on with Donald Trump's hair, though.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, no, that's 100%. I mean, definitely personality. Like, I got to say, one of my favorite presidents is Reagan. And if I listen, right, I actually had a collection of like speeches from Reagan. Every one of the speeches I agree with like 100%. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the reality and the meat within the nut, there was a lot of things that Reagan did that I'm like, oh, I couldn't really get behind that, know? And that's okay.
Well,
right?
He was likable.
We're never going to like him, right? But that's my point. I mean, it's like somebody being pretty. Exactly. Reagan was very disarming and very, hey, I'm a good guy. And honestly, Bill Clinton, right?
He was pretty good at that. Good-looking guy, right?
Good-looking guy, absolute charmer.
Full head of hair.
Full head of hair, right? Anybody you talk to, Bill Clinton is a charmer. Mm. Now, obviously there was some scandalous shadiness with women, and honestly, we even wonder about Epstein Island with that guy. There's a lot of things that you really might find repulsive, but because he's a nice, cordial, friendly guy, I mean, even like, I think Obama was kind of that, but he wasn't Bill Clinton. I mean, I don't care how you try and paint it. Obama was not as charismatic as Bill Clinton was. Bill Clinton had a way to deliver.
Right. Now, but let me ask you something. How important is the charisma to the actual job? You know what I mean? Like, what if you're really funny and you're really good at jokes? Like, do you want a serious guy for president, maybe? You know what I mean? Somebody that's boring and not funny.
Right. They were trying to throw around a couple of campaigns back, like Tom Hanks for president or something. And they were like, oh, or, I somebody even like threw out like The Rock, I guess he kind of lost it after the whole Hawaii Oprah scandal thing. But
yeah, that the whole thing was a little bit weird, wasn't it?
It was a little bit weird. Yeah, Slick Willie. That's I always like, people will be like, what president did this? And I'll be like, Slick Willie. And everyone's like, who are you talking about? And I'm like, really? You don't know. And maybe that was too much listening to Rush Limbaugh. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple of things that are like pertinent issues that are going on right now. So Kamala Harris was talking about price gouging, right? A national ban or one of those things.
She did. She didn't like that.
Yeah. So what is price gouging? I mean, there's not a real definition for that phrase. It's not like a specific thing. A lot of people say it's raising prices to maximize profit during an emergency. So it would be like,
Are we in an emergency?
Right? So 37 states have laws about price gouging that are very specific. And some of them are like raising more than, and it's specifics for gas and food and water.
Right.
Are you raising prices more than 10% when your cost hasn't increased over the course of one day?
All right. I think that's...
So, yeah, that's like different states have different rules, but it's right around that.
But let me set that up, right? Because you're 100% right. Like, I get it. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, you shouldn't take advantage. But here's where it gets tricky, right? So I was in Western North Carolina in the horrible hurricane, right? And I mean, I was absolutely like not ground zero, but really close. I mean, absolutely no power lines all across the street, roads washed out. I was driving over these roads. It was bad, right? Now, I had to drive, I would say, about 70 miles to get to the first gas station that had electricity and had gas. Okay. And when I got there, I had to wait 2.5 hours in line to get gas. And I was scared to death that they were going to run out before I got to the pump, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad, you know? And it worked out and everything's fine, whatever. But gas was like $2.74 a gallon, where it was 2.5 miles or, 2.5 hour wait, right?
Right.
It was $2.74 a gallon. And now the restrictions were you had to pay cash. And mind you, everybody was there, so people had cash. And I think a lot of people didn't know you had to pay cash till you waited that whole time in line. And then you're like, oh, shit. But and you were limited to $50 worth of gas. Okay. But if they had charged more, say they charged $5 a gallon, would people have only bought what they really need?
Right.
Instead of
2 gallons to get to where you're going.
To the next gas station.
Right.
Would that have encouraged, like, I bought $50 worth because, one, I didn't know what the future was going to hold. But if I was being totally honest, I probably could have got away with maybe $37 and been comfortable and to get to the next thing.
Right.
And did I take away more gas from other people who needed it? And if it was $5 a gallon, I still would have bought what I bought. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered, but just the same, people would have been more cautious, right? And they would be like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would think the same thing about, remember the great toilet paper shortage?
Oh, the toilet
2020.
Right. If that price had gone up, you would have been like, oh.
Right. If the supermarkets had the right to just break open all those things and sell them separately as $5 a roll.
Yep.
Everybody would have enough toilet paper. You know what I mean? Like,
you would have corrected that problem.
Yeah.
Now, what was your take? Where were you going to go with this? Is that basically, I mean, that's kind of the analogy I wanted to make, but
yeah. Well, what I would say is overall, I think that, like, well, here, let me read this. This is from Christopher Neely. He's an economist with the Federal Reserve. This is what he says. Most economists believe broad price controls to be costly and ineffective in most situations because high price function to allocate scarce goods and services to buyers who are most willing and able to pay for them. And they signal that a good is valued and that producers can profit by increasing quality supplied. So basically what he's saying is, like, playing with prices is only going to cause more damage than natural price fluctuation is going to do. You're going to cause more damage than good.
I think that's true, but
despite whether I think that's true or not, it's not. I don't feel like it's a good idea to have a federal regulation on this. That would be something that a state should have their specific regulations. And now, mind you, if you break the law and, do price gouging, it's not like you go to prison. You know what I mean? You get a fine. It's not like, it's not like you're in jail for 20 years.
Right.
There's not really anything going to happen to you. But I mean, it's when you start doing like federal manipulation on like small areas, you start causing big problems for the bigger areas.
Well, and you don't recognize what's going on there. Actually, I was just talking to a buddy of mine, has a farm near us. And as you guys probably know, you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that I kind of have a little farm here. And again, I'm not like a farmer, right? I make my money being an electrician, but we have big gardens and we sell things at farmers markets and we're involved in the local community and business kind of stuff like that. And one of my buddies is like, oh, we're selling our turkeys for $7.95 a pound this year. And that, like, when you hear that, you're like, oh God, that's expensive. I could be buying $160 turkey or something for Thanksgiving. But I got to say, I raised 4 turkeys and it cost me about $200 a piece. Now,
Right.
mind you, I didn't butcher them as quick as I should have because I was too busy. And so I was throwing feed at something that I didn't need to
That was already full size.
But if I was completely efficient, now mind you, they were big. Like I have like 25 to 28 pound turkeys. I mean, they're some big boys, right? Or big girls and boys, whatever. They're big. But just the same, I think even if I was totally frugal and whatever, to grow kind of natural turkeys, legit, it probably would have cost me $120 a piece to grow these turkeys.
Right.
And from nothing. Now, obviously, if I put them in zero space and had them next to each other and, did whatever big pharma, whatever big ag is going to do, then I could probably have done, more efficient, right? I mean, I know we're going to go to the store. We probably won't see 19-cent a pound turkeys, but we'll see maybe 59 cents a pound turkeys, right?
Right.
And that may happen. And I'm not taking away from that. But my point is, it costs to do stuff. And to be like, yeah, it's the grocery stores being evil. No, it was the people printing money and spending it like we don't have any care when we're giving it to all these countries and things when we don't have it. And we're just rolling money off the printing press or digitally creating money. That's where a lot of your inflation is coming from. I got to tell you, talking to the farmers and everybody around, nobody is like, oh, we're making money hand over fist. Right. No, it's not like that. Like, remember we used to get mad at the oil companies, right? Remember gas went way up and they're like, oh, everybody's making record profits over at Mobil and Exxon and blah, 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 and more money than they've ever made before. Well, it's funny because they were actually making more money than ever before. That was all true. But what it was is they charge basically, in your mind, the simplest way to look at it is they make 10 cents a gallon, or sorry, 10% a gallon off the product they sell. So if gas is selling for $1 a gallon, they're making 10 cents a gallon. If gas is selling for $5 a gallon, they're making 50 cents a gallon.
Right.
You see, so not
the more expensive the oil is, the more money they make. It doesn't have like, it's not like. It
wasn't like they were gouging and are like, oh, it's $5.
Right. They're charging the same amount.
Right. Their fee is the same. Right.
Their fee is the same. Right. So right now, national average price is $3.17 a gallon.
Okay.
I saw it yesterday at a gas station locally that was just under $3. Which is surprising for New York. New York is usually one of the higher prices.
I
was looking at oil prices. Now I was looking at oil prices around the world. So France is paying $5.54 per gallon. That would be American dollars to gallon. They use euros and liters, but that would be the equivalent. Germany's paying $3.58 a gallon. China's paying $3.40 a gallon.
Okay.
Right now, the United States is currently pumping more oil than's ever been pumped by any country in the history of the world.
Wow, that's impressive.
Surprising. I didn't realize
that.
It
is surprising. I wouldn't have realized that.
Like, there's never been a time or a place where a country has produced more barrels of oil per month. So, I don't know. Going pretty good so far on that front. You know what I mean? I fully support, it's I think a lot of it has to do with hydrofracking. And, that definitely jumped up the amount we were able to produce. But yeah, interesting. So what do you think about the Department of Education? That's another big topic that is going on in the world right now.
Right? They're scare me. Well, that's the same thing. I think that in my level, I mean, I don't know what you got going on there that you're really looking for, but I know with me, the Department of Education, we should have different people trying and doing what they want. One of the big things, I touched on this, I think earlier, maybe I didn't, I don't know, but about how we have the 13 different states that are allowed to kind of do their own thing. And I think obviously there's 50 states now, and 52, I think we discovered in one of the previous election cycles, there were 52 states. But anyway, I think they had already made 52 stops in their campaign tour, I think was the one that I'm referencing. Yeah. But anyway, but the thing is, right, each state should be able to decide, hey, this is what we want to teach our kids. And we should kind of see who's putting out the cream of the crop. Now, I do know that New York spends a ton more money on education than the South does, than a lot of states down here. A ton, like 5 times more per child. Right. It's ridiculous. Now, they're
starting salary for a teacher in New York State, you just got out of college, this is your first job, $84,000 a year.
All right. Now, one of the poorer towns next to me, and it's the only place I know where I know a new teacher who just started, but they're making $22,000 a year.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a significant difference right there.
But something to keep in mind. Now, I don't even know how that's like hitting minimum wage or whatever. I don't even understand how it all works, but whatever. That's what I know from a teacher that I know, and they're like, oh, this is what I get. Now, mind you, it is like a poor community, and that's what that is. But all these things. So, one, how do you have the same standards when you have different money to work with, right? How can you get the same results? You can't really guarantee that. And then it's funny because I know one of the rules is the better that the schools do, the more funding they get. And so you're not getting any money because you're
not getting helped out. Yeah. So let's run through it real quick. I've got a list here. Best states K through 12 education.
All right.
Best 5 and worst 5. So best 5 are Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Hampshire, New York. So it's basically New England. The worst states are Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and West Virginia. That's the South, I guess. I mean, Georgia isn't on there. Florida's not on there, Yeah.
I know in Virginia Beach, my kids got a pretty great education when I was folk there.
Yeah.
In the military. But, hey, you do you. It's funny. They had some kind of disadvantaged children, and it turned, could go to like a pre-K where they got a head start on things. And my kids were disadvantaged because their parents were in the military. That was their disadvantage. I'm like, oh, man. But yeah, that's the world we live in. One of the things too, I mean, I don't want this podcast to go on forever. I don't want to take up all your guys' morning. I know everybody's got things to do, but I always feel like we need to worry when there's like clever campaign slogans, like hope and change, or even make America great again. Right. Like, I mean, both sides of the aisle, everybody does it. What do these slogans mean? Like when you dig down to it, I don't even know. Does Kamala Harris have a slogan?
Yeah, what is hers?
I think it's eat the rich.
When we fight, we win.
When we fight, we win. Not eat the rich. All right.
It's not real catchy, is it?
No. And it's awkward if you lose. Yeah. Now, I do feel like there is I think that Trump I think he has a chance of winning based on the stuff I'm seeing. However, now work with me before you get excited. I don't think it's a lock in any way. I'm just saying he has a chance. But I also feel like on the flip side of that, if he wins, they are absolutely going to take him to court on it and try and overturn it. And that's my point.
Do you think it's going to not happen the other way around too?
I think that he won't have any chance of making any headway if it goes the other way. Whereas I think that the Democrats have a chance.
What do you mean?
So I guess what I'm saying with that is I think that if Trump wins and they say, oh, we're going to say that you had committed treason, so you're not eligible for it. And I think they're going to take that to the courts and then basically say, look, even though you weren't convicted or even charged with treason, we know that you committed treason, so you're not eligible. And since the only a person who won electoral votes can be voted for. See, then it goes to the Congress, and the Congress votes to pick the president, but they can only pick somebody who won electoral votes. And so therefore would then only be able to vote for Kamala, and she'd be a lock. Now, there is a loophole. I saw a scholar on Glenn Beck talking about it, and he was talking about the legal loopholes of that. And he said, one, he thinks that's really a possibility of what people would do. Two, I think that this is what the guy said. If a state like California has like 50 congressmen and a state like Oklahoma has 2, they both get an equal vote kind of thing. See what I'm saying? So turns out there's more conservative states. It's just the ones with bigger population are usually more democratic and like that. So you would actually have more Republican states, but they would only be allowed to vote for Kamala. So that's where you kind of get into trouble. However, according to this guy that was on Glenn Beck, was like, look, technically they could walk out and not vote, and then the vice president would become president. And since Trump would have won, that would be Vance. But you and I both know you can always count on Republicans to shoot themselves in the foot and not do anything like, oh, well, that would be awkward. It's never been done before, so we can't do it. Or, you know, they would, and then you'd get, well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Democrats, though. I mean, we have a bunch of, I don't know. I feel like my choice is voting for people between 2 people that talk like losers. You know what I mean? Like, I hear, like, people running for president, like, complaining that they're not, like, being treated fairly. Like, bro.
Yeah.
That's just childish behavior. You're running for president. Don't act like a kid about it.
Right.
You know? But, I mean, whatever. I mean, we're all going to get stuck with who we get stuck with, and you know, the facts are what the facts are going to be, and we'll see what happens on election day. I'm interested. I feel like the news is going to be interesting. I feel like interesting stuff's going to happen. You know what I mean? The fires haven't started burning yet, but it's not going to be long.
Right. People get excited about like the Super Bowl and things like that, dude. Always like presidential election. I'm like, yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah, that's my World Series than Super Bowl.
I know it is. I'm like, all right, get the chicken wings. We're gonna sit here all night. It's gonna be great. We're gonna, get some beer, and everything's gonna work out.
Yeah, I do a shot every time a state goes blue, and I drink a beer every time the state goes red. So by about 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm good.
Ready to go. I don't know. I never understood the colors. I always think that red should be associated with communism. And I'm like, well, I think we're backward.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
I can never wrap my head around it. I'm like, now maybe they don't see it quite that way, but that's how it is in my mind, in my mind's eye. I'm always like, I don't get it. Why are Republicans red? They're the commies are the other way. It doesn't make any sense. But mac and cheese and tuna salad, it's a crazy world.
I would say send all your hate mail to me.
Okay. I like that.
At preppingbadass@gmail.com. You got anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up for today?
You guys have show ideas, things you want to talk about, hear about, learn about. Email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com, and that would be cool. I will say today's episode, we can say we have a sponsor, 1791 EDC. I will put their info in the show notes, and they sent me this freaking awesome like EDC, like I would say holster. I use it for like the Leatherman, the flashlight. It put like the key ring on at work. I'm like an electrician at work, so I climb around in machines and whatever. And having that stuff there, I got to say, they were like, hey, we could send you this awesome thing. And it was pretty great, like sturdy, thick leather, And I'm like, all right, I can get behind that. It's funny, the stuff I have always like stretches out, and I'm dropping flashlights down into, machines with the ones they give me. So anyway, there's stuff you might want to check it out because it really quality. and I love the way that it's delivered. So you might want to check them out. I'll put it in the show notes if you want to see what it's like. Also posted it in the Facebook group, that kind of thing. Anyway, super important if you like and subscribe. That would be awesome. We don't want you guys to miss a show. I know if you made it this far, you're enjoying it. So we appreciate it. Also, if you leave comments and things, reviews on wherever you download the podcast, that'd be awesome. It always helps, grow the brand, right? Otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Hey, it's Chuck with the Survival and Basic Badass podcast, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. Rifle season is finally here. An Academy Sports and Outdoors store has everything to gear up for the field for less. Don't miss our Savage event, where you can score up to $100 off select Savage rifles for a limited time. Plus, shop a wide selection of rifles, ammo, deer stands, game cameras, optics, and camo hunting apparel from the brands you trust. Swing by your local Academy store today, or shop academy.com, where we have thousands of firearms with free ship to store. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping. Well, we'll see you soon at Academy Sports and Outdoors.